I'm making a video today about installing a mobile radio into your vehicle. In my case, it's my 2004 Nissan Xterra, and I'm installing a 2-meter ham radio, but the same general process. Works for a CB radio as well. This is not a ham radio or a CB radio channel, so this is not going to go into a lot of detail as far as the actual radio technology and things like that. But as it's related to trail use in an off-road type environment, those are the two usual types of radios that you'll have people wanting to be able to run. Now this is my Yaesu FTM 6000R, and this is actually my base station radio that I have inside my house, but I'm just highlighting it to show a couple things. Like, one of the very cool things about this radio is, it's got a bracket that you can use to mount, so you can mount it under your dash or whatever, but it's a very quick disconnect. So a lot of radios have a little thumb screw on the side, but this one just has a little lever, and you can disconnect the entire unit from the bracket. So this is actually kind of handy if you want to run it in your vehicle and then you want to snap it out of your vehicle and then install it on a workbench back in your shack. The other thing that's nice about this one is they have detachable faceplates. A lot of ham radios that are newer have this, where there's a cable that attaches the faceplate and control unit to the actual body of the radio. So if I wanted to do a remote mount, they have an extra cable that comes in the package that's like 3 or 4 feet long or whatever, so I can mount the actual big box underneath the seat, and then I can just mount just the head unit itself, which is a lot smaller, and I can mount this on the dash. Now, one of the things that's not as great with this radio in that regards is that the handheld microphone is still attached to the main box, so they don't really have an extension cord for the main microphone, so that kind of limits the usefulness of that. But ICOM makes a similar dual band 2-meter and 70-centimeter radio that has a detachable faceplate as well. Now, this is not the one that I'm putting in my vehicle, but I just wanted to show you that because it does have some nice features. These newer radios have some nice features to make it easier to mount in a vehicle. Now, as far as CB radios go, there is a Cobra radio that basically has the entire radio chip more or less in the microphone itself, and on the end of the microphone is just a very small module that's about the size of maybe a deck of playing cards or something like that. That seems to be a popular one. And there's also other types of CB radios that instead of a full DIN size, a head unit size, they got them that are thinner and lighter, and that makes it a little bit easier to mount. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my vehicle, and I'm going to show you how I have my radios mounted. So I managed to mock up a way that I could install this Kenwood 2-meter radio in here. And in the cubby below, I have my President Johnny 3 CB radio. So I'm going to show you how you can remove some of this trim and how you could install a radio, any way you want. That's the two ways that I took to installing it. You could always, put it on the side next to the transmission hump. You could put it underneath the dash, underneath the steering wheel, and you could mount it any way you want. So the first thing you're going to do is remove this bezel that goes around the shifter knobs. And that's pretty easy, at least on my vehicle. It's always been really kind of misfitting and never snapped down really well. So what I do is I turn the key into the accessory position so the engine's not running or anything. But I go ahead and I shift this back, to drive, put this into 4-wheel drive, and that's just so I can pop this up, and then I rotate it to get it clear of the shifter knob, and then I can put that back, and that frees up the bezel and the surround here. So on the actual dash, go ahead and remove any electrical accessories from your cigarette lighter / power port. This, at least on my vehicle, almost basically falls out, but there is a little wire harness connector that you can unplug and toss that back here. This is my switch for my light bar. That kind of pops out. So look around for some other screws. A lot of my screws are missing, most notably. If you look underneath right here, there was 2 screws that should be there, but for whatever reason are not there on my vehicle. So unscrew those screws. Now there's nothing really that holds this in. It just kind of snaps off like that. I'm going to put the parking selector all the way into 1 just to get more room. I'm going to slide this out, and now I can kind of pop this light bar switch out. That's of course my wiring that I did, that's not stock. And there's going to be a wire harness connection on the back side of the hazard switch. So go ahead and disconnect this. And here you go. This entire thing should be free, minus the things that are holding my CB radio in place. On the back side of this pocket, there's a couple screws that should be holding it together, but mine are all missing for some reason. There should be a screw here, and a couple on the underside. So if you want to disconnect this to work on it to install a radio in there, you can. But you can see I just have my radio double-sided taped inside this compartment, and I just cut out with the Dremel a section to run the coax and to run the power and ground wire. So looking at the dash panel that was here a little closer, I did notice that it looks like there's probably 2 screws that are supposed to be right here too. So if you're trying to, remove your dash and it's getting stuck, remember 2 screws down here, and it looks like 2 screws right here. And I think that might be everything, but like I said, a lot of the screws on mine are missing, so I've just rely on kind of these friction clips in these slots here to hold the dash on. Makes it for easy to, disassemble, but not necessarily the best. So a CB or a ham radio is typically going to come with a pigtail with wiring already sticking out of it. So I just cut a little bit extra so that way I could still get to the connections and put in some quick disconnects here to plug the radio into it. So I'm going to disconnect the radio so I can show you a little bit in more detail about my CB setup. So the CB radio I have is President Electronics, the Johnny 3. It's a nice radio. I like it. For CB radio, they're very limited as far as what they can do, just because they're limited to 4 watts. But this one has a couple good features. One, it has scan. So if you get a basic one that doesn't allow you to scan all 40 channels, and you're just sitting here flipping knobs hoping to catch someone, if you're just going to talk to random people, if all you use a CB for is for trail rides where you're on a dedicated channel, then that's kind of a non-issue. This one has weather band, so I like that, when I'm driving around or whatever, I can listen to the weather, the NOAA weather radio stations. It's got some other, fun goodies as far as like Roger beep, key beeps, a memory channel. You can store one. You can change the color of the backlighting. And this one has automatic squelch control, which is really cool. Squelch is how you filter out undesirable noises. So if all you have is static and background noise, typically you would just adjust the squelch until it quiets all of the background noise, so that way only strong signals come through. That being said, sometimes ambient conditions can change as far as RF noise, and so sometimes you'll have the squelch turned up so that way it's not listening to a lot of the background noise, but then you'll just all of a sudden get a big blast of noise that's annoying. So this has automatic squelch control, so you just leave it on that one setting and it pretty much filters out the noise unless there is a strong signal. And I haven't had any kind of false openings of the squelch, if that makes sense. It's always been really good at reducing the background noise. So it's just got this bracket and thumb screws over here, and I just got some double-sided tape on it, so I stuck that in the cubby and put that down there and kind of stuck it in place. It's been there for a few years now, and so heat cycling and everything being in the interior of a car is not that sticky. I'll probably have to renew that. So there is the DC 12 volt power with a fuse on it. Now this fuse is at the radio. This fuse is to protect the sensitive electronics in a radio. It is not going to protect your wiring, so you still want to put another fuse holder at your actual battery. So, an inline fuse. And this is your PL259 coax connection. There's also a jack here, external speaker. So if I wanted to get an external speaker to make it louder, like maybe the speaker's on the bottom of this, so when it's in that cubby, if it was too quiet, then I could mount an external speaker like on the dash somewhere, make it play louder for me whenever I'm talking to someone. And this one also has Vox, which is voice activated communications, I believe is what that is called. But that's basically, instead of having to hit the PTT or push to talk button, it'll automatically transmit when it senses you talking into it. And it's got an output for a PA speaker, so if you wanted to mount a PA speaker, you could drive down the street and yell at people on the sidewalk. It'd be kind of fun. So that's how I generally have my CB radio mounted. Now, if you still have the stock head unit and you need to take out the stock head unit, or if you want to replace with a single DIN head unit or install a pocket here or whatever, there's going to be 4 screws right next to it. And I'm going to go ahead and remove these out and kind of show you how you can remove the head unit, how you can remove the pocket or the stock head unit or whatever you might have mounted in here. screw. If you end up dropping screws back behind the dash here, it's almost impossible to find, so you know, try and be careful. They're very annoying. So these screws are unscrewed, so I'm just gonna like pull the radios and get them unseated. They were caught on like one little thread here. So the head unit will come out. You have the coax cable that goes to your AM/FM radio antenna. So this is just a push connection. You just pull it straight out. The stock head unit will have these 2 wire harness clips, and if you have an aftermarket head unit, you know, you'll also use them, but you'll need an adapter to plug into the vehicle wire harness. I think, there we go, that should disconnect it. Alright, what else do I got here? Oh, here we go. And this is the coax for my ham radio that I went ahead and started to pre-run it. I'm going to disconnect it. I'm just going to put these radios on a bench to show you in more detail how I ended up kind of fabricating them together. So the stock head unit has these brackets and it's got 4 screws. And since the stock head unit is basically the size and height of both of these radios sandwiched together, basically it just goes into the 4 corners of the bracket on each side. And then these little ears that stick out is what holds it into the dash. So if you're going to be just replacing your head unit, then what you'll do is you'll just disconnect the screws and you'll attach the top 2 holes to the top 2 hole locations that can receive those screws on the actual head unit that you want. Now if you're just installing a head unit and not a ham radio on the bottom, then you get what's called a dash trim kit. Now the dash trim kit comes with a pocket, so this can hold a cell phone or wallet or whatever. And it comes with like a little bezel trim kit, and there's a couple screw locations on it. And basically, this specific trim kit comes with, might be hard to see, but there's a black plastic piece that's on the side here, and a black plastic piece on the side here. And those black plastic pieces basically just slide into these locking ears and locking tabs here, and so you're basically just snapping it all together, and then you attach them with these bottom screws on the bottom part of this bracket. The screws on the bottom part of the bracket go into these, you know, extruded holes on the plastic parts. So that's basically how I mounted the ham radio on the bottom of this. I took the black plastic pieces, and the ham radio has 2 little machine screws on the side for their normal mounting bracket, similar to how my CB radio has a mounting bracket. This one has a mounting bracket as well. And instead of using the mounting bracket with the ham radio, I drilled a couple extra holes in this plastic bracket and I sandwiched it and bolted it up to the body of the CB radio. Now the body of this ham radio is more narrow than the overall full-size head unit, so there's a gap there. So I did just wedge a couple of rubber spacers in between the metal bracket and the plastic place, just so that way it didn't flex and it doesn't allow the brackets to bend and sit you know, at an odd angle. So that way everything is kind of, you know, nice and tight there.